Good afternoon, Bobby. This is Tom Sugar from the Wearable Robotics Association. And Bobby, let's talk about your exoskeleton catalog. Could you tell me a little bit firstly about your web page and then a little bit about the catalog, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Tom. So the idea for the Exoskeleton Reports catalog is that it can be tricky to categorize and visualize like what are all the different types of exoskeletons. So why not have a bird's eye view where with using filters and categories, you can just click on it and you can immediately see what is it that we are talking about. And the idea came from a PowerPoint presentation that you made about 10 years ago, where you put together as many exoskeletons as possible on 12 slides and you started doing the categorization for it.
Yes.
After that, ISART did a medical robotics catalog, which took it a little bit further and had filters. And over time, this has evolved and been maintained with your help and help from others like Cost Action 16116 when that was around.
So I want to emphasize, I think, to people that we have over 200 exoskeletons in this catalog, and these are exoskeletons that have been commercialized. So you won't, is this correct? You won't see academic exoskeletons in this catalog. It's just ones that are actually out there on the marketplace.
Yeah, right. This is only devices that are out there on the market or are really close to being there on the market. There are no one-off research and development prototypes, so try to weed them out as much as possible. And also, there's more than 50 devices which are now no longer on sale, and they have been retired. And they have been removed from the catalog. So if anyone needs to see those, they'll have to contact me or you and ask for view permission for those.
So first off, you can filter exoskeletons by where, and this was kind of how I was categorizing them 10 years ago. We could think about exoskeletons that are in the industrial marketplace or occupational exoskeletons. We could think about exoskeletons in the medical field. We could think about exoskeletons in the military field, or we could think about exoskeletons that are, in the commercial field.
I try to model the car industry as much as possible. So the first thing is like application, which is who's going to be using this exoskeleton. But I think that is a whole nother separate discussion on where we see exoskeletons being applied.
Right. Next, we can think about exoskeletons, whether they are passive. And we talked about this before. Some exoskeletons have passive actuation. Some exoskeletons have powered actuation. Some exoskeletons are quasi-passive, where you're turning them using some motors to turn springs, let's say, on and off. Some exoskeletons are fixed to have a fixed frame. They're fixed to the world. Some exoskeletons are tethered.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar, I think, to like how now we have electrical vehicles and we have internal combustion and we have gas vehicles. It may or may not necessarily make a difference to the end user, but it's easier to visualize what's out there by being able to break it down. So a very popular way to break it down is by these categories. If it's powered, passive, if it can move around freely, or it's a device where you're moving in it but it stays in one place, or if it's some sort of a hybrid system that has elements of both.
Then next, you could filter exoskeletons based where they're located on the body. And so you can think about back, ankle, elbow, hand, hip, knee, shoulder, waist. And so I think that's, obvious. If you're interested, let's say, in a back exoskeleton, you might want to click lower back and waist, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for a solution that covers multiple body parts, you can even click on them simultaneously. So like a lower body exoskeleton that completely takes the weight off would be like either a hip ankle or even a hip knee ankle, depending on which joints are actuated.
Okay, so you can we can click on multiple of these. We can click on hip, ankle, and knee. Okay.
Yeah, feel free to do it right now, and then you can
Right.
just
So we can literally say, I'm interested in an exoskeleton that focuses on the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And then we've limited, instead of having 203 exoskeletons to look at, we can look at 18 exoskeletons.
Yes, and you can either further reduce it down if you're looking for one that has active motors or one that is passive and relies on elastic elements.
Right. So let's do that. So I would like to think about a passive system that's relying on exoskeletons that helps with the hip, knee, and ankle. So I can click on passive, and now I'm going to get 6 devices. So you've got 6 devices. Excellent.
And that way it makes it easier rather than being overwhelmed by 200 different systems. You can start narrowing it down, filtering it, and really being able to differentiate and see what's on the market. So the idea is to have both the bird's eye view that this is not just 1 or 2 companies out there that are making exoskeletons. It's an entire marketplace. It's an entire industry at this point. And also have the ability to filter, reduce and be able to do more focused searches.
Right.
And when you're done with that, you can just go down and hit the clear.
Right. So if I'm done with that, I can hit the clear button. And I'll go back to the original 203 results. And then lastly, I think we didn't see this yet, is we could filter this by application, whether it's personal use, pick and carry, rehabilitation, research, sports, pediatric, injury prevention, fitness, energy harvesting, chairless chair, back support, systems augmentation systems, and assistive systems. So we had one last filter. What was your thinking in this category, Bobby?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to if you scroll back to the top. So at the end of the day, these devices are meaningless unless they do something useful for the users. So I think it was important to start being able to categorize what is the intended use. So initially we have the intended market.
Yes.
Medical, military, occupational, recreational. But then we can further drill down. So the very first two are a good example of it. Assistive versus augmentation. So the way that I visualize that and the way the catalog is divided is you have medical exoskeletons, which can be ones where they're part of a physical rehabilitation program, and you're expecting the person using it to get better and better over time. The exoskeleton is as much a tool for the user as much for the operator to help with mobilization. And we will go further down into applications of exoskeletons is exactly what we mean by that. So that'll be an assistive exoskeleton that assists with mobilization, initial physical rehabilitation. An augmentation one would be one where we expect that the exoskeleton will stay with the user for a long time. That we're not expecting that the body part that's being assisted, and again here the terminology kind of overlaps. We are not expecting that the user will stop using the exoskeleton, that it's going to stay with them.
Okay. Good. Right. And then also you could pick something like back support, so exoskeletons that are helping the back. Okay, so I see. So I, 5 or 10 years ago was thinking about categorizing exoskeletons by categories: industrial, medical, consumer. I think I was using the word consumer. Um, then what you thought about is, okay, I then want to think about filtering them towards an application. It might be fitness or energy harvesting or chair. Excellent. Okay. So then let's do some examples, I think. Now that we have 200 exoskeletons. We can filter by category. We could filter by type. We could filter by body. I'm going to call it body part, where a lot of people have thought of that. And then we can filter by this application. So let me clear and make sure that's all cleared. So let's pick something. Let's say I'm going to pick something. Let's say we want industrial or logistics or occupational type exoskeletons. And I want passive. And I'm really interested in back support, actually. So I'm going to pick back support. Then I should have 39. I've got 39 commercial exoskeletons that are helping in the industrial or occupational marketplace. They're passive systems and they're helping out with back support. So,
Right. And if you click on the picture or the name of the device, you will get more information on it, and you can click within the different categories. If you click on the
yes, so I'll just pick one. So let's just pick. I'll pick a couple. But so if I click either on the picture or the name, I'll come to a specific. I don't know what catalog entry, I guess I'm going to call it. I'll get to a specific catalog entry, and it talks to me about this exoskeleton. You have pictures for each one. Excellent. Then the category is back support, and then there's tags. So this is the tag that it's a back support. It's made by a certain company. It helps do injury prevention, and it's a passive system.
Yeah, and you can click on that, which will pull you away into a slightly more primitive view, which now uses only one filter at a time rather than the multi-filter system.
So if I click on one of these tags, or do I click on category?
Yeah, you can click on either the tag or the category.
So I click on the tag. Oh, and now it just it has all the exoskeletons that have that tag.
That have that tag, yeah, precisely.
So if I go to the back button, because I want to kind of go where I was, then I have description of the device here. And you actually have some related products as well. And then I could click here to go to their website. I don't want to, right?
Yeah, you can click on the website. You can click on the big red button that has.
So if I click on the big red button, it takes me to their website.
Yeah, both of those links will do so. Absolutely. So the important thing to think here is that none of this is official. This is simply meant and designed to help people first see that it's an entire field, an entire industry of exoskeleton devices. We're talking already 50 retired products. So this is not an industry that is a baby field that is only 1 or 2 years long. We now have decades of exoskeleton devices and wearable robotics that are helping people and making a difference in the real world. There's different ways to categorize them. Just because the Exoskeleton report uses this categorization system, that is by far absolutely not the only way to do it. And it's only meant to provide a service to make it easier to absorb all of this information. Just like when you look at cars, you separate mentally if you're looking at a truck, if you're looking at a sedan, or if you're looking at a sport coupe. You're not trying to look at everything all at once. You divide and conquer. Like you compare SUVs, you compare big rig trucks, but you don't try to do it all at once. Different organizations also have different ways of doing it. Recently, the Italians have had a standard on exoskeletons where they have a different category, which is how closely the wearable follows the contours of the body. How closely the joints of the device match the joints of the user. I personally don't like using that approach because I think it's difficult to differentiate between how closely you are following the morphology of the human body. And then also you have differences from person to person. You have a giant 6'5" Marine or someone who's significantly smaller, like a 5'5", 5'10", then the relative morphology to the exoskeleton will also change.
Right, right. But I want to get back to something you said. You said, that this is a service. I want to talk about how valuable this service is in the sense of for the worldwide exoskeleton community, this service is is very valuable because it gives a picture of the marketplace right now today, commercial devices, because many people like to say, oh, this is a brand new technology, it's a baby technology, it's unknown. But here we're showing that there's over 200 exoskeletons out there in the marketplace. So maybe you could talk a little bit more too about why you think that this is such a valuable a service. Because I could also, I'll talk a little bit more too, but I think it's a really valuable service because we're trying to show to the worldwide audience, not just exoskeleton producers. We're trying to get to the actual end users and show the end users what's possible. So maybe you could make a couple comments, Bobby.
Yeah, I would love that. No, that's an incredible point. The way that I always say it, like your model and the Wearable Robotics Association's model is exoskeletons just work.
Yes.
My thinking is we've had a digital revolution where we've changed how we communicate, how we experience life. I'm fortunately old enough that I remember life before the digital devices. So I've kind of had to have the both worlds. But physical devices have not really changed for hundreds of years. The bicycle is 200 years old. The wheelchair is 3,000 years old. We have all of these gadgets that can now beep, vibrate. They can tell us if we are overexerting ourselves, but sometimes that just doesn't really matter. You could be an elderly person that needs to get from point A to point B. Your device could be screaming and beeping at you, but you still need to get the job done. You could be on the ski slopes and you want to finish your run, so your knees might be hurting. You might have gadgets that are telling you how much compression you have, but you still want to ski. You could be you could be an employee that has a task that needs to be finished. You could be cleaning out, like, let's say, a nuclear reactor. The work needs to get done. And why not have a new family of devices that supports physically what is it that we do as humans and all of humanity? And for that to happen is you need to have investors that understand what they're investing in, that it's not a one-off technology, that there's now multiple entities that are trying to get to a wider market. You need to have regulators. You need to have politicians. You need to have standards bodies, ASTM International. Even right now, since we're talking about categorization, they currently have an active committee. The design committee is trying to come up with a better way, easier way to categorize exoskeleton devices. So that's people volunteering their time and effort. And you don't get that unless people know that this technology exists, that it exists beyond just Iron Man and aliens. that there's real practical devices that are already being used around the globe. So that's the whole point of this effort of this catalog, is to show that this is real. It's not just fantasy. In some cases, it might not work exactly as intended, but people are trying. There's solutions that can be divided up into types and categories. There's multiple of each one. So come in, join us, invest, participate, use, develop, join. This is the field, and it's only going to keep getting better.
Thank you, Bobby, for those really inspiring words about trying to build a physical revolution. I think that it's taking time, but I think that the work that you're doing is invaluable in trying to show people what is possible. Because I'll, give you an example where let's just, if you're older, you might want a medical exoskeleton that can help you walk. And so, it could help your ankle, hips and knees, and you want a medical system that can really help. And there's going to be systems out there. For example, I want to promote, the Wondercraft device was seen at the 2024 Paris Olympics. And these systems are needed. I can tell you from experience that, if an elderly person is just, sitting down in a wheelchair or laying in a bed for a long time, it's very difficult. You lose lots of muscle mass quickly. So the question is, can we design systems that help people in the physical world, that build a physical revolution? And thank you, Bobby, for being part of this, because this is a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, and it's important.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for your input, and you've had decades of experience with this too. Staying just on the topic of categorization, I think there's many ways that it can be achieved, but it's meant just to make things easier for consumers, because we don't expect people to have a bioengineering degree to be able to understand and select a device that can meet their needs. So anything that can make life easier. Some of the terms can be a little bit complicated, like tethered. Tethered is, there's an umbilical cord to the exoskeleton. It doesn't have its own power supply. In some cases, even the motors or actuators could be disconnected from it. And they reside in a separate box, a separate environment. Decades ago, the Japanese were toying with the idea of having a walking assist device and then following it be like an R2D2 unit that has the controllers, that has the batteries. So it offloads the weight off of the wearable itself.
Right. And like fixed rate systems would be, I think, typically more in the medical, from what I know, more in the medical rehabilitation area, where you have exoskeleton devices that are fixed to the frame. Systems might help for, the shoulder, or might help the hand, or might help the arm, after stroke rehabilitation and those types of things. So
the easiest way to think about it is practicality. If you have a person that needs to be mobilized, it could be easier to have a crane that lifts them up from a wheelchair. That way you can strap them into an exoskeleton, which is then suspended either over a treadmill or over pedals. They're moving underneath the person. But then obviously with that contraption, you're not going to be walking outside.
Right.
and doing physical rehabilitation or activities of everyday living. So it's both a mobilization exoskeleton, but also you're going to be standing in one room.
Mhm. Let's do maybe one or two more things. I'd like to talk about like like a passive exoskeleton and what do we mean by that? So a passive exoskeleton for the lower back. So maybe we could pick, one of these. We could just explain what would if I'm a manufacturer, what would be a passive exoskeleton for the lower back? And maybe we could just pick one of these.
Yeah.
Maybe Bobby, you could try to talk about one of these.
You can pick absolutely any of them. Basically, it really boils down to user expectation. Whether it's a passive lower back support exoskeleton or an active lower back exoskeleton, ideally it should do the same thing at the end of the day. Lower back pain is one of the most common routes to injury and lost productivity time. The world and society can benefit from having devices that directly address it and try to reduce the compression forces, try to reduce the fatigue that builds up over time on the back. So we separate them by passive and active mainly so someone knows what to expect. That a passive one would prioritize using elastic elements, which are charged when a person bends forward. They usually, more of them are usually exosuit type of device where they're predominantly made out of soft elements. So you're looking at something that is lighter, something that will have an identical behavior, something that needs to be charged by the human body, and it's usually a lower cost device.
So what I like to say to people is you have this potential energy, you squat down, you charge the device, and then that energy is given back. And so then let's see, could I do a powered exoskeleton for the lower back? No, right now. So powered exoskeleton for the lower back. Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah, you uncheck the passive and check the powered. Right.
Yes.
And then you can see that they're very similar, but immediately some differences come to mind. So they have on average they have a larger footprint. They usually have batteries and would require charging, or some have compressed air that requires recharging. Depending on how the controller is set up, however, they can provide instantaneous torque or force, so they can be locked in place. So it's almost a drawback. One is, at this point, one is not better than the other. It's just a different pathway of reaching the same goal.
Right. So what I like to say to people that I could be some benefits is that you could turn these hip motors off and you could walk around theoretically, not always perfectly, but you could walk around theoretically with these hip motors off, and then you would turn these hip motors on only when you need it. So the hip motors could be turned off, you're walking around. The hip motors could resist your motion as you go down, and then the motors would turn in the opposite direction and assist you as you went back up. The passive and powered systems that are on the marketplace are helping people.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's at least 100,000 units out there, and I think we need to do a completely separate section on applications of exoskeletons and really do a deep dive. But speaking of deep dives, you kind of touched upon a few things here. Yes, you can turn it out, but then how freely you move in a powered device depends on the back drivability.
Yes.
And how compliant it is. And then some passive devices have been able to reproduce that behavior by having quick disconnects and clutches.
Yes.
So it again a different path in order to get to the same destination.
Right. Right. And so it's exciting times because people are building different types of devices, right? The question is, if you have a powered system, is it really, uh, us in academics like to use the word transparent. How transparent is the device? But certainly there's exciting new developments with passive systems that can clutch the spring systems on and off, and that would, I think, be a separate topic. But what we wanted to do today was really kind of get at again that you can filter this catalog based on categorization. You can filter based on power and passive systems. And I think that's been quite important over the years. People want to talk about, is your system powered? Is your system passive? Is it quasi-passive or quasi-active? We could get into that in another
No,
podcast.
I think we can do a slightly deeper dive since we're talking about categories. I think now is actually a good time for those who are interested. So there's an emergence of hybrid exoskeletons now, which share both properties of powered and active devices. So one way to think about it is if you have a tiny motor that can quickly change the spring constant on the elastic elements.
Mm-hmm.
So to visualize, if you're working in front of you with a shoulder support exoskeleton, for example, you have one elasticity value that will be best to support you. If you now need to start working really high above your head, now you need a different one. So with a passive device, normally you have to do a manual adjustment.
Yeah.
But with a hybrid device, there's the possibility that once the control system is good enough, that there will be a tiny motor that goes and changes that spring constant, and now the exoskeleton automatically adjusts to that different height.
I was
And then
gonna
quasi-passive,
I was going to try to show that. Wasn't there in your catalog? Wasn't there a shoulder device that is this one, right? Wasn't this one?
yes, I believe that one falls in because this is so new right now, we still don't have hybrid in the
Okay.
catalog, but that's something for people to watch out for. Another one that exists that it's a little bit more difficult is quasi-passive. And that is an exoskeleton that is a passive exoskeleton, but it has a powered component to activate a brake.
Right.
So either for stabilizing or even for gaming now, they have these gloves where you can move freely, but the moment it thinks that you're touching something in virtual reality, brakes would engage and stop your fingers from going further.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a elastic only passive device. It is not a powered device because it's not helping you grasp. It activates a resistance at a specific time. So historically, and this is with the help of Arun, we've defined them as quasi-passive devices.
Excellent. Okay, so any last comments or any last thoughts about this catalog that we've got here? So if you go to exoskeletonreport.com and then you click on the catalog, you can click on all devices, and then you can filter, as I said, like industrial systems for the lower back that are powered, and you'll get a set of devices, and then you can clear and then start all over again. Any last thoughts, Bobby?
Yeah, this is all just for everyone's convenience. None of this is set in stone. This is not a standard. If anyone has any suggestions on how to do it better, I'm also part of the ASTM International Committee F48 work group, where we're trying to come up with a better categorization system. You can always scroll down at the bottom of the website. There's a contact us button. You can leave a comment in this video. and I'm really looking forward to doing a separate episode on where these exoskeletons are found, what work environments have they shown and proven themselves to be of assistance and help to people, and what work environments we expect them, based on what we know, that over time they will prove their value.
Mhm. Good. Thank you. And I think we'll end on that, Bobby's done more than 10 years of work developing a, an exoskeleton report and an exoskeleton catalog and an exoskeleton calendar to really try to build, this industry. And so thank you, Bobby, for doing that.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Thanks for noting that. And you have not been a slouch either in the last 10 years with the Wearable Robotics Association and the both WearCon series and WearCon Europe series. You are the person that brought this field together in person.
Thank you. And since you mentioned that, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind, I could point you to wearablerobotics.com. And under wearablerobotics.com, you can see our future events and all of our past events that we've done over the last 10 years with conferences and innovation challenges. We link to the exoskeleton catalog of Bobby's. We link to the directory. We link to a calendar. And we talk about us. And please think about joining our team. We put a lot of time and effort into the growth of this industry. And I like to use the word, as Bobby said, we were coming up with this lately, exoskeletons just work. So I like to end there. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you for your time.